Aloha, guys. This is Dr. Tom coming at you from the Hawaiian Islands. Now, we're heavily involved deeply into our topic of consciousness. And what we've talked about last time, and we're going to talk about this time, is more about the famous double slit experiment. The one that blows everybody's mind and continues to do so, and has for like 150 plus years. Okay. Engaging at the slits or watching at the slits of the double slit experiment, or photographing, or measuring, changes the wave behavior into particle behavior. For quite some time, for a long time, what am I trying to say? Parapsychologists and people like me interested in science and paranormal have said it's consciousness that's doing that. It's consciousness. And they'll say, no. And we don't have to have consciousness to do it, guys, at least, superficially. Because the act of measuring and bouncing photons of light off the slits to see which slit the particles like electrons or photons are going through is enough to create the effect. So we know that. But what if we set up a double slit device that was sealed and nothing but consciousness could interact with it? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what our friend Dr. Dean Rayden did. Here's a simple drawing of his device, but in Dean's lectures, he often puts this up. Everyone offers theories about consciousness, but no one ever does anything about it. All right, Dean Rayden is the senior scientist at IONS, the Institute for Noetic Sciences. In one of the previous studies, I made a mistake. I said the Institute of Noetic Studies. It was founded by Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, the astronaut. Dr. Mitchell was very interested in science consciousness and established the Institute to study human potential. Okay, Dean Rayden is one of the preeminent psychic researchers in the world. He's been involved with the study of psi for many years. He's a worldwide authority. Since the double slit experiment is famous in science and remains a mystery, Dean designed some experiments to see if consciousness really can collapse the wave function and make it go from a wave, make particles manifest out of the great energy field with the resultant particle pattern. Can consciousness create quanta? In other words, that's the question. Here's a picture of his device. You can actually buy these. A sealed double slit device. The double slit experiment, this is the quote I was trying to think of the other day by the great Richard Feynman, a famous physicist. The double slit experiment has in it the heart of quantum mechanics. In reality, it contains the only mystery. So Feynman said, hey man, it's all in the double slit. Why? It demonstrates the probability of these virtual particles manifesting. And probability is something we'll talk about later, because I tended to leave that out accidentally. In quantum mechanics, the measurement problem consists of how or whether wave function collapse occurs. In other words, particles form. The inability to observe such a collapse directly has given rise to different interpretations of quantum mechanics. When the wave function collapses, particles condense out of the energy field. Any means that allows us to determine which slit the particle went through collapses the wave function, meaning watching it, photographing it, measuring it with some device, or perhaps something else. The question Dean Rayden had was, can consciousness alone collapse the wave function in the double slit device? About 2010, Rayden began experimenting with the double slit. Because the ability to concentrate mentally was of importance, Rayden used meditators as his primary subjects, although he used non-meditators as well. With a subject seated about 2 meters, that's 6 feet, from the sealed optical system, he asked them to visualize the double slit in their mind and to imagine they could see which slit the particles were traveling through. There was also a tone the subjects could listen to so they could close their eyes if they chose. They were instructed to make the tone become louder. They concentrated for 30 seconds and relaxed for 30 seconds. Each subject did it 40 times in a 20-minute session. The initial test run involved 35 sessions, with 15 subjects. The results were promising, so Dr. Rayden continued. Rayden and his team conducted 4 pilot studies. They used meditators and non-meditators as before. Most of the time, the meditators did significantly better. Why? Because they can clear their mind and they can concentrate on that slit device in that sealed container 2 meters away from you. Most of the time, Rayden also used important control sessions where no subjects were involved. The controls showed no effects. We all know what that is, right? I mean, you have to have controls too. He performed 250 sessions involving 137 people. Again, the results were promising. Dean and his crew set up the formal study. It would involve 50 formal sessions. The double slit device was shielded in a special steel room. So they couldn't go over there and kick it or punch it or breathe on it or whatever. The double slit device was shielded, so I said that already. The results were very impressive, 5 sigma. Very impressive. As Rayden always jokes in his lectures, 5 sigma results were enough to earn the Higgs boson team a Nobel Prize. And then he says, but they didn't even really find the Higgs boson as the God particle. Still controversial. I have looked that up and I don't understand really what the controversy is, but we'll talk about that later because it's relevant to some points I want to make in psi research. And it is the effects were very small, and it took years and years to find these little tiny effects. Oh, in other words, the very same thing they criticize psi researchers for, psi being psychic, of course. Okay, the results were published in 2012 physics essays. They were so impressive that Rayden was mildly concerned. Maybe it was something to do with the distance. He went big time in January 2012 on the internet. The device was switched on. Now, remember before, it was in a steel room sealed away from the experimental subjects. But let's go big time. Let's let people out there around the world do it over the internet. That's what he did. The device was switched on and remained on for 3 years, continuous. People from around the world could log on, follow the instructions, and participate in the study. Eventually, they performed 5,000 sessions with human subjects and 7,000 with a robot system. They used a Linux system as a robot. And this was the control aspect of the experiment. A computer system can act as a robot. This robot was essentially the control aspect of the study. Again, the results were very impressive and demonstrated that consciousness was not just a passive response. It steered the direction of the study. Phase 1 was accomplished. Phase 2 began. The previous study involved streams of trillions of photons. Rayden designed an experiment that used single photons, bleep, bleep, shot towards the slits. A small Buddha lamp was attached to the device and glowed brighter if the subject mentally steered the results in the proper direction. Now, it wasn't this actual one, but this is the best I could do. Now, of course, by this time they're back in. They've already done their studies online for 3 years. Now they're back in the laboratory, and they're wanting to see what 1 photon at a time will do. And a small Buddha lamp was attached to the device and glowed brighter if the subject mentally steered the results in the proper direction. There was also an auditory tone as well. They called it the illuminated Buddha experiment. Again, the results were impressive with a 2.55 sigma. Not as impressive as 5 sigma, but still. Rayden published it in Quantum Biosystems 2015, won a prize for the most innovative research from Nascent Systems Incorporated. Okay, we've talked about meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is a study of similar studies, an analysis of the analyses. For example, in our drawing up here, here's study 1, 2, 3, and 4 that study the same general effect. And meta-analysis examines how all these tend to work together. So naturally, they did a meta-analysis of the findings of the double slit. We got an airplane going over. Over a period of 8 years, Dean Rayden and crew conducted 17 separate experiments that examined the role of consciousness in the double slit experiment. And actually, one of them didn't use it, but I always throw it in too. They did a meta-analysis of the results. They were impressive. With a fixed effect size, and we're not going to explain this in detail, but we'll just go with it. With a fixed effect size, the sigma was 8.9. My God, it's atmospheric, or stratospheric. With random effect sizes, sigma was 3.97. P-values, we haven't mentioned p-values yet, but we will more, which rate the likelihood of it being due to chance, were huge. I know in psych research and parapsychology, they usually want a p-value of 0.05 or smaller. These were very small, and the smaller they are, the less that it was due to chance. Fixed effects had a p-value of 5.6 times 10 to the minus 17. Random effects, it was 3.6 times 10 to the minus 5. The odds against chance were a staggering whatever this number is, per the Society for Psychical Research. I think it's maybe trillion. Okay. Now, of course, in science, it's important to have it replicated or have it examined. Physicists Nicholas Tremblay and Wolfgang Bayer evaluated the results independently and found them to be correct. Results have also been duplicated at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Did Rayden cheat? Of course, conventional science hates things like this, and they ain't shy about saying so. After decades of psi research, no one knows this as well as Dean Rayden. The first question was, how do we know the subjects were actually concentrating? Well, huge numbers of subjects and sessions helped to control for that. Also, the studies done with the subjects in the lab were attached to an EEG to measure their brain waves, the electroencephalogram. Alpha wave desynchronization was said to occur when a person was concentrating. The team consistently found that to occur during periods of concentration. So the EEG said they were. The next question, how come no one's noticed this before? The answer is simple. The effect size was quite small and no one had ever looked for it. And then Dean says, well, actually, that's not true. Successful replication had been conducted at Boston University in 1976 and at Princeton in 1998. The pair program had produced similar results in their study of conscious effects on random events. Of course, Rayden could have been sloppy or even cheated. That's a term that gets thrown out very frequently. What if something was wrong with the device? Well, they used 4 different devices. What if the effects were due to vibration? Well, it was shielded in a 2,800-pound steel room. What if timing caused the effects? Random decoupling occurred during the non-concentrating portions of the sessions. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but that handles the timing part. What if temperature variance caused the results? 4 thermocouplers were used and temperature remained steady. So they measured for all that. Was there p-hacking? What if p-hacking occurred, selective removing data up to p-score? The fact to indicate how close it was to chance alone. Analysis showed none. 2 scientists have evaluated the data and found it correct. And the same experiment with similar results has been conducted at another university. Then finally, how can we convince orthodox science to accept this study? Well, you better not hold your breath, because they've been fighting that uphill battle for decades now, and it doesn't seem to have changed any. It's just the same now as it was 25 years ago when I was researching my book, The Force is With Us. As we continue our studies, we will see a familiar pattern. Conventional science doesn't like this area. They will discredit, unfairly criticize, and lie to protest the results. Just wait till we discuss psi. Of course, this is a very much a psi experiment here. Okay, very quickly. So what does Dr. Rayden conclude from his years of study? The role of consciousness in the physical world can be studied. It's been tested many times and in many different ways. Results suggest that consciousness is an active participant. Why? Not only does it collapse the wave function but it can steer the direction of the experiment by making the tone sound louder or softer or making the Buddha light brighter. And also, distance was not a factor in the 3-year online study. They had somebody as far away. I think the furthest was South Africa. I forget how, 12,000 miles or something. Okay, guys, we're running out of time. We're going to pick this back up. It's starting to get fun.
We got all that energy stuff behind us. I'll catch you in the next one. This is Dr.